The first day I moved into my new house, I thought I'd finally escaped all that HOA nonsense. No more warning letters about my grass height. No more strangers measuring my mailbox. No more friendly reminders about paint tones. Just peace, quiet, and my own little patch of land where I could breathe again. But life has this funny way of sending you one last test before you're truly free, and mine showed up wearing a pencil skirt and a fake smile at 7 in the morning. I'd barely finished my first cup of coffee when I saw her through the kitchen window. Blonde hair pulled tight enough to make her eyes shine, clipboard in one hand, measuring tape in the other. She was pacing my property line like a detective at a crime scene, crouching every few feet to take photos of a wooden board I'd laid across a small drainage ditch. Nothing fancy, just something to keep my truck from scraping while I figured out a better fix. She circled the spot twice, squatted, took more pictures, and spoke into her phone like she was narrating for a court record. I could catch bits and pieces: violation, drainage standard, section 4 point something, and my first thought was, who the hell talks like that on a Saturday morning? I should have ignored her, maybe even laughed. But curiosity got the better of me, so I opened the door and called out, "Can I help you with something?" She didn't even look up, just waved her clipboard and said, "Community standards apply to everyone, sir. My husband handles legal matters." That tone, the kind of cold, self-appointed authority that makes your blood simmer, it told me everything. She wasn't here to introduce herself. She was here to mark territory. That evening, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No postage, no return address, just my name written in perfect block letters. Inside, a letterhead that said Meadowbrook Valley Homeowners Association, followed by a violation notice citing unauthorized structural modification to community drainage. Now I bought this house precisely because it was outside the HOA boundary. The listing had said so in bold. So I laughed, tossed it on the counter, and figured it was a mistake. The next morning, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up in front of my house. Out steps a tired-looking deputy, followed closely by the same woman, arms crossed, eyes blazing, like she'd just been handed divine authority. "Sir," the deputy said, "we got a call about a drainage violation." I just pointed at the plywood and raised an eyebrow. "That." He checked his tablet, scrolled, and finally said, "Ma'am, this isn't HOA property. County jurisdiction only." You should have seen her face. It was like someone unplugged her from the power grid. She started stammering about community infrastructure and shared utilities, but the deputy was already walking back to his car. When he drove off, she just stood there, red-faced, clutching her clipboard like it was the last piece of her dignity. I thought that was the end of it. Turns out it was just the beginning. 3 days later, I got an email from the City Code Enforcement Office demanding I correct non-standard drainage modifications within 72 hours or face daily fines. Scarlett. That was her name. I'd learned by then had filed a formal complaint with the city. Not only that, but somehow my insurance company got wind of it. They called saying my property was under review for liability risk factors. By the end of the week, my mortgage lender sent me a notice about a compliance assessment. It was like every system that could possibly make my life miserable was suddenly synced to her crusade. Scarlett had figured out how to weaponize paperwork. It got darker from there. She set up a live stream on the sidewalk wearing an orange safety vest, pointing at my house with a laser pen, like she was giving a TED Talk on proper drainage ethics. I watched through my blinds as she spray-painted yellow lines across the edge of my driveway, talking about infrastructure boundaries. And the craziest part, people online were eating it up. She called me the non-compliant neighbor threatening our community ecosystem. I became a villain in her HOA fanfiction. But fate, as it tends to, sent me an ally when I least expected it. Her name was Dorothy 70s, silver hair, smart eyes. She knocked on my door one afternoon carrying a manila folder thicker than a phone book. "You're not the first," she said, stepping inside like a retired teacher who'd had enough of everyone's nonsense. Turns out she'd been on HOA boards in 3 states and had seen every flavor of petty tyranny you can imagine. Scarlett, she told me, had been trying to expand the HOA's control for years, slipping in new policy drafts, faking committee votes, even fabricating documents. Dorothy laid out her evidence on my table like a crime scene investigator. She's not just bossy. She said she's building a paper empire. We decided to expose her the only way she couldn't twist out in the open. Dorothy organized what she called a site walk, invited a few other neighbors, and dared Scarlett to show her proof. And sure enough, she came strutting down the street, that Sunday reflective vest gleaming, holding a laminated sheet she called a technical infrastructure memo. It was full of measurements, numbers, and an 80s contractor logo. She waved it like a holy relic. This document, she said, establishes HOA oversight over all adjacent drainage structures. I asked to see the original. She said, for preservation reasons, the original is in secure storage. Dorothy smiled the kind of calm, deadly smile only a retired teacher can pull off. Then let's call the county, she said. So we did on speakerphone. The automated line read off the exact statute. Contractor as-built memos have no legal authority. They're just record notes. Scarlett's face went pale. That's not accurate, she snapped, voice cracking. This is technical nitpicking, she yelled. But by then, other neighbors were filming, whispering, shaking their heads. She stormed off, muttering about ignorant property owners, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd give up. That hope lasted 2 hours. I got a text that night from an unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. At that point, it wasn't just about the board or the ditch anymore. It was about control. She wanted to make me break financially, mentally, any way she could. I decided if she was going to play games with documents, I'd make my own. I started logging everything, every letter, call, email, even the time of day she drove by. Dorothy helped me cross-reference HOA minutes, and we found something bigger: unauthorized drainage work done under her direction using fake signatures from a JK technician. A guy named Sam, an electrician down the street, matched the initials. That's Jason Kelly, he said. Her ex-husband. My stomach dropped. Turns out Jason had been coerced into making fake memos when they were still married, paperwork that she later used to justify all her false citations. He came forward at the next emergency HOA meeting and told the whole crowd. She used my credentials to fabricate jurisdiction, he said. The room exploded. Scarlett tried to scream over him, waving papers, threatening lawsuits. You don't understand, I own this system, she shrieked. But then Robert, one of the board members, stood up and said, You don't own anything, Scarlett. You just made it up. The vote to remove her was 38-2. When the gavel dropped, she slammed her clipboard, swept the table clean, and stormed out, papers flying like confetti at her own downfall. You'd think that was the end, but she didn't go quietly. A week later, she was out on the sidewalk with a drone circling my roof, pretending to document evidence. People walked by like she was invisible. Even the mailman didn't glance at her. 2 weeks after that, I heard the unmistakable sound of metal being driven into dirt, a for sale sign going up in her yard. The sharp clang of defeat. That was the moment I realized power doesn't always fall with a bang. Sometimes it just fades into background noise, one ignored voice at a time. These days, Dorothy's the new HOA president, if you can believe that. She set up real checks and balances, a 1-page form you have to fill out before filing a complaint, a 24-hour waiting period to stop revenge citations, and a community fund to help anyone facing harassment. People started helping each other instead of tattling. We became a neighborhood again, not a battlefield. Looking back, I don't even think Scarlett started out evil. I think she was terrified of losing relevance, of not being in charge, of realizing the world doesn't need her to measure its ditches. Control's a hell of a drug. Once you get a taste, it's hard to quit. But she taught us something valuable, that real power, the kind that lasts, comes from people who stand together, not from one person shouting rules no one agreed to. So yeah, that's how my peaceful, non-HOA dream house turned into a full-blown legal thriller. And I'd do it all again because what we built afterward, a neighborhood that actually understands its rights, that's worth more than any lawsuit or drainage ditch. Tell me what you think. Was Scarlett just power-hungry? Or was she a product of a broken system that hands people clipboards and calls it authority? Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading the comments from my porch, right over that same wooden board that started it all.